The markets are closed, but the business stories are just heating up. Hello, I'm Mai Rodriguez. Catch up with us on Business Brief. Asian shares trade mostly higher with no major market-driving news in the region following Wall Street's relentless rally. Hong Kong's Hang Seng and China's Shanghai Composite edge lower, while other regional indexes post gains. In currency trading, the Australian dollar slips against the greenback, while the US dollar strengthens against most Asian currencies. In commodities, gold advances while oil prices decline. In crypto, Bitcoin adds 0.3%, while Ethereum sheds nearly 0.2%. The Philippine financial sector's total resources rise by more than 6% in July. Latest data from the Bangko Sentral show total resources of banks and non-bank financial institutions reached 34.59 trillion pesos, up from 32.50 trillion a year ago. Rizal Commercial Banking Corporation Chief Economist Michael Ricafort says the year-on-year growth in total resources is consistent with the country's 5.5% gross domestic product expansion. He notes that future cuts in U.S. Federal Reserve and BSP policy rates could lower borrowing costs. It can also make loans cheaper and drive higher demand, supporting faster growth in bank resources. Dismissed DPWH District Engineer Henry Alcantara admitted the kickback scheme in anomalous flood control projects in Bulacan in today's Senate Blue Ribbon Committee hearing. Alcantara named Senators Jinggoy Estrada and Joel Villanueva, as well as former Senator Bong Revilla, as proponents, but said he had no direct transaction with them. Alcantara says the congressman he had a direct transaction with was a Bicol Representative Zaldi Co. He admits delivering 25% kickbacks from Bulacan projects to Congressman Co's residence in Pasig City. In his testimony, he also said the piles of cash pictured in the Bulacan District Engineering Office are Zaldi Co's alleged kickbacks. Alcantara says the kickback deals began in 2022 under Secretary Roberto Bernardo, involving a 25% cut for the proponent with cash sometimes delivered by him or his driver. Initial 10% payouts were allegedly made after the National Expenditure Program, with full amounts released once the budget was approved. Blue Ribbon Committee Chair Panfilo Lacson clashes with Senator Rodante Marcoleta during today's resumption of the Senate's flood control probe. Marcoleta questioned Lacson's answer during a previous interview that former Bulacan Assistant Engineer Bryce Hernandez is more qualified to enter the government's witness protection program than contractors Curly and Sara Discaya. But Lacson asserts he was only stating his personal opinion. Marcoleta countered that Lacson shouldn't be making such statements now that he's the chairman of the committee investigating the corruption scandal.
The hearing or outside of this hall, so don't question my opinion.
I am not questioning your opinion, Mr. Chair, but you are the chairman of this committee. I will register my continuing objection, Mr. Chair. I will question the objectivity of these proceedings if you will not allow me raise these points. Maybe in the plenary this afternoon I will raise it.
The Independent Commission for Infrastructure and the Mayors for Good Governance signed a memorandum of understanding. They are joining forces to look into the flood control mess. Pasig City Mayor Vico Sotto, Quezon City Mayor Joy Belmonte, and Isabela Mayor City Hataman were present during the signing event. For the ICI, Justice Andres Reyes and former Public Works Secretary Rogelio Singson were present, as well as SGV Country Managing Partner Rosana Fajardo and Baguio Mayor Benji Magalong. The group also plans to establish a whistleblower hotline for those who want to report questionable projects. The Independent Commission for Infrastructure should look into how cash that's used in corrupt practices and transactions is being withdrawn from banks. Political strategist Lito Banayo raised the suggestion on BNC's Business 360, citing as an example the piles of cash pictured on a table in the DPWH Bulacan Engineering Office. He questioned how officials were able to withdraw bundles of cash without raising red flags when government agencies use government depositories.
The contractor must have gotten his check from the DPWH from either Land Bank or DBP or both, as in whichever is the depository. Paano na-withdraw yung hundreds of millions of pesos? No?
The money trail.
The money trail, no?
Yeah.
And that is something that the ICI should look into, no? Hindi lang DPWH, pati yung Land Bank and DBP, no? Yung mga branch managers that were involved, no? How did they violate Bangko Sentral rules, no?
With the Philippines facing a growing debt of 17.3 trillion pesos and global economic uncertainties, Banayo says concrete infrastructure legacies remain unlikely, and the only possible legacy for the Marcos administration is a serious focus on anti-corruption. Senate President Tito Sotto and Senate President Pro Tempore Panfilo Lacson met with a three-member independent commission for infrastructure on Monday. They discussed how budget amendments and insertions are made. Sotto said budget insertions can be done by individual or institutional amendments. He added that the worst practice is the insertion during the BICAM. Lacson also shared to the panel his findings on how public funds were pocketed by unscrupulous individuals. Sotto says the Blue Ribbon Committee's probe will continue despite the independent panel's investigation. He added that the committee will submit to the ICI all its findings. Former Senate Finance Committee Chair Grace Poe denies participating in any small committees of the bicameral conference committee hearing where alleged budget insertions were made. She appeared before the Independent Commission on Infrastructure on Tuesday as a resource person to clarify the budget process. Poe explained that amendments from both houses of Congress are reconciled during the BICAM hearing in close coordination with the Budget Department. Authorities have started to assess the damage brought by Supertyphoon Nando, with Baguio City and northern Luzon bearing most serious impacts. Paulo Barcelon is in Quezon City. He now joins us on the line for the details. Hi, Paulo. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mai. The agriculture sector anticipates major damage due to Supertyphoon Nando. Agriculture spokesperson Arnel de Mesa says they are now verifying with the Cagayan provincial government that damage to agriculture in the area has reached 400 million pesos. De Mesa also says crops in the southern Tagalog region also sustained damage.
Karamihan ng damage ay nasa rice dito sa Quezon at siguro in 2 to 3 days we can see kung papasok na yung datos galing sa ibang probinsya. Again, especially dito sa mga northern, western and eastern side ng Luzon. Apektado yung mga highlands natin sa Benguet at dito rin sa mga gulayan sa Nueva Vizcaya at Aba.
De Mesa adds pre-positioned seeds are now being distributed to affected farmers. The agency asked the National Food Authority or NFA to release its rice stocks to assist both farmers and families displaced by the typhoon. Crop insurance funds are also being prepared as farmers are expected to get funding for their damaged crops. De Mesa adds supplies of vegetables from Benguet may be affected as plantations in the area have also suffered damage due to Nando. Meanwhile, the Energy Department reports that out of 4 renewable plants knocked offline due to the storm, 2 have now been restored to the grid. The Cagayan North Solar Power Plant and the Caparispisan Wind Power Plant. Power in Batanes is also being restored after a diesel plant in the northernmost part of the province was hit by the storm. 5 other power plants in the Cagayan Valley are on standby to provide power, while 3 transmission lines are down in Abra and Cagayan. In total, over 350,000 customers are affected by partial and ongoing power interruptions. Mai.
Thank you for that report, Paulo Barcelon. Mayor Benjamin Magalong calls on the City Council to initiate a third-party investigation into the Baguio tennis court project. Magalong said an impartial review is needed to shed light on concerns raised, particularly on the bidding, implementation, and financial management of the project. Questions were raised on the project, citing the selection of St. Gerard Construction, owned by the Discaya couple. But Magalong previously said the project complied with all legal procedures. He added that the city's Bids and Awards Committee carried out its duties in accordance with the law. We're taking a short break. More stories are up next. You're watching Business Brief. You're back at Business Brief. The local pharmaceutical industry is expected to grow at an annual rate of 4.1% until 2029. The Board of Investment says this expansion is largely driven by rising demand for generic drugs. The investment promotion agency under the Department of Trade and Industry provides updates on the integrated roadmap for the Philippine pharmaceutical industry, or IRPPI, which started in 2023. For 2025, the Philippine pharmaceutical market is projected to generate nearly $2 billion in revenues. BOI Industry Development Services Executive Director Maria Corazon Halili Dichosa laments that the country remains heavily dependent on imports. The Asian Development Bank will continue to provide funding for the country's transport infrastructure. Let's get the details from Just Ignacio joining us on the line. Hi, Just. How much has the ADB provided so far?
My $7 billion US dollars. This is the funding commitment of the Asian Development Bank for the country's railway system. That's according to ADB when asked by Bilyonaryo News Channel how much support has been extended over the years. According to Andrew Jeffries, ADB Country Director for the Philippines, discussions are also ongoing for continued support in the future.
We have over $7 billion US dollars of funding commitments as of now. And we have discussions on ongoing support going out into the future.
Jeffries added that their support began during the previous administration under the Build, Build, Build program and has continued under President Marcos Jr.'s Build Better, More program. The country director also emphasized that the current administration is trying to boost its transport infrastructure growth to catch up with the rest of the ASEAN region. Mai?
Thank you for that report, Just Ignacio. San Miguel Corporation begins paying 16.39 billion pesos in redemption proceeds to stockholders for its Series 2 preferred shares, Sub-Series 2F, starting today. In a disclosure, the company says it has redeemed more than 218 million shares. This represents about 97.9% of the series. Robinsons Land Corporation sells 1 billion shares worth 7.75 billion pesos in RL Commercial REIT Incorporated through an overnight block placement. In its disclosure, the company says the shares were sold at 7 pesos and 75 centavos per share. The offer was oversubscribed nearly 4 times, allowing the transaction to be priced at the high end and reach 1 billion shares. Final allocations were led by local institutional investors, with new foreign investors also participating. We're taking another breather. A look at how Philippine shares did today when we return. Stay tuned. callous and cruel. That's how U.S. immigration lawyers describe President Donald Trump's new visa policy, a one-time fee of $100,000 for H-1B visas. Trump announced the measure Friday as part of his immigration crackdown, raising fears of higher labor costs and restricted access to skilled workers. The H-1B program allows U.S. employers to hire foreign specialists in fields like technology and engineering. Higher fees are expected to drive up costs for tech giants and strain smaller businesses reliant on this talent pipeline. AILA President Jeff Joseph warns the policy could ripple across industries from tech to manufacturing and discourage global talent from coming to the U.S.
The level of employers that rely on the innovation of the H-1B is much broader than the tech companies. So, you're talking about hospitals, universities, rural doctors and dentists, renewable energy, oil and gas, manufacturing, engineering, the clergy, finance, infrastructure, architecture, lawyers, CPAs, transportation.
A cyber attack is disrupting check-in and boarding systems at major European airports, causing widespread delays and cancellations. Heathrow, Europe's busiest airport, confirms that a third-party supplier for multiple airlines was hit, forcing passengers to deal with long lines and slowdowns. Airports in Brussels and Berlin are also affected. Berlin-Brandenburg warns passengers to expect longer waiting times, while Brussels Airport says it has been forced to switch to manual check-in and boarding. The attack is causing major travel chaos. Data from Flight Radar shows 91% of flights at Brussels Airport are delayed, with an average wait time of 51 minutes. Disney announces that the Jimmy Kimmel Live will return to the ABC television network lineup on Tuesday, a decision closely watched by advertisers and investors. The show was suspended last week after threats from Federal Communications Commission Chairman Alan Davidson over Kimmel's comments on the assassination of Charlie Kirk. ABC's parent company said it halted production to, quote, avoid further inflaming a tense situation at an emotional moment for our country, unquote. The Disney statement also said some of Kimmel's remarks were ill-timed and insensitive. But after discussions with the host, the company decided to bring the show back on air, signaling a move to reassure audiences, advertisers, and shareholders alike. Philippine shares fall for the second straight session. The PSEI drops 1.5% to 61.18, making it the worst performer in Asia. Among sectoral indices, only mining and oil end higher, while financials fall the most, dropping over 2%. Decliners outnumber advancers 129 to 78, with value turnover reaching 22.7 billion pesos. All of the day's most active stocks end lower, with RL Commercial plunging more than 4%. On currencies, the peso trades at 57.01 against the US dollar, strengthening slightly from the previous close of 57.06. That's a wrap for today's Business Brief. I'm Mai Rodriguez. Join us again tomorrow as we bring you the stories that help you plan your next big, bold moves in business. Only here on the Bilyonaryo News Channel. See you then.